Welcome to the Green Team of the Legendarium, the weird little spinoff where patrons of the Legendarium get together to discuss the books and topics the main crew haven't gotten around to yet. I'm your host, Little Red Book. Tonight I have with me the officer from Albany, Colonel Rabbit.
Hello.
And the doctor without a demon, member of the main crew, Todd Wente.
I keep wanting people to call me Learned Todd, but it doesn't happen yet. Oh well.
You'll get there eventually.
One of these days.
We are going to be discussing Penric's Fox and the Masquerade in Lodi by Lois McMaster Bujold. These are the third and fourth novellas in the Pen and Des series. Now, this is not in publishing order, but rather in internal chronological order. Overall, what do you both think of these books?
Rabbit, you go first.
All right. I think Penric's Fox is one of my favorites of what I would call the early Penric books. Because there's, not to get into too much, but there's kind of like a progression of Penric from he's a kid, he's an adult, and then he's growing up further. So I think this is like my favorite of the three Penric as a kid stories. And then Masquerade and Lodi I still enjoy it really a lot as a story, but I think it's probably one of the weaker Penric books.
Interesting. Yeah, and for me, so I did them both in single sittings, which is very unusual to have that kind of time available for me. So I kind of crushed them, and I'm glad I was able to because they were I found them delightful. I found them pleasurable, but I found them dealing with some similar. I felt like they dealt with similar issues as far as the storytelling, but they also approached some really interesting character development. And I had some moments in each of them that I was like, "Huh, that's something I really didn't see coming." So I was very pleased with, very much enjoyed reading them.
So Penric's Fox is probably one of my favorite Pen books. And this is only the second time I've read Masquerade at Lodi because it's just not. It's moments, but all of the moments are when Pen and Des are interacting with each other, not when Pen is interacting with other people. Although, except for the one part with the Saint when he first meets her.
Yeah.
That's the only part that I found fun, I guess you could say.
I will say, in both of these books, the side characters we get are absolutely fantastic.
Oh my goodness. Such well-written side characters. I appreciate more and more her ability with very little time to give us some really decently fleshed out side characters. I really like that. That's not necessarily a skill that everybody does very well.
Yeah, she has excellent short stories, for sure. Oh man, it only gets better from here, though, I gotta say. But first, this is going to be spoilers for Penric's Fox. Like, from here on out, we're just spoiling it all. It's a 4-hour audiobook.
All right. For a summary of Penric's Fox, the story follows Penric and Inglis as they're having a lovely day fishing, drinking, and talking theology, only to be interrupted by Oswell, their cop friend, as he comes looking for them for help with solving the mystery of a murdered sorceress. Poor Oswell is dragged through an Agatha Christie-style murder mystery, plus magic, where they're trying to figure out not only who killed the sorceress, but where did her demon go. Complete with a conspiracy to kill the woman to destroy her demon, Penric goes full barbarian, kills a villain, rescues an innocent, and helps the shamans rescue a fox and her kits.
That's cute. That's well written. You should give Pen some pointers.
What do you think about the setup for this story?
I think it's very classic Penric and Desdemona in that a lot of their stories feature dead people. Like a vast majority of these stories, despite being low stakes as in terms of the fantasy stories, the vast majority of them start with "We found a dead person."
Yeah. I kind of in the back of my head heard the Law and Order sound, the beginning, tong tong. You know, and they started this one like, yeah, well, we found another corpse we gotta deal with.
I would love to see Penn and Des Law and Order.
So there's two things I really enjoy about this story. First, as you said, it's low stakes. Like all of these stories are low stakes, and that makes it nice and relaxing to read the stories. But I also love that in this particular story, the three main characters of the past story, they're all buddies now. And
Yep.
now they're going to go solve another mystery. And the way the characters interact with each other is just, it's great. Like, you have this theological argument that's going throughout the book. And then you have poor Oswald. And he's just like, look, none of my mysteries used to be this crazy until I met you two.
Yeah.
Just normal. They were normal things.
Yeah. The interweaving of these characters together and making them comfortable with each other's worlds and being able to have them inform each other's world. It's kind of like, oh, you know, I'd kind of like to know more about being a shaman. It's like, yeah, sure you would. You're already a sorcerer. What are you trying to do? You know, this kind of casual banter at the beginning that sets all of these pieces in motion is nicely written. It's a good introduction to the feel, I thought, of the book, which then turned into this really interesting buddy cop procedural drama kind of deal, you know? You know, murder of the month kind of a deal. I'm like, okay, well, I know where this one's going, I think.
I love that it starts off with they're sitting on the riverbank and Pen's like, could I create a great earthworm?
It's like, no.
And throughout the book, he's like, oh, I need to learn more about that. And Des is like, of course you do.
Yep.
Yeah, it's quite entertaining it's the kind of, I guess one of the reasons that I enjoy these stories so much is that it's the way that my inner monologue works without feeling like he's insane. My inner monologue always leaves me feeling like I need to talk to someone. In fact, I will occasionally joke. Sorry if I'm tangent. I promise I'll come back. I am known to say in the middle of my classes when I'm going off on something, I'll stop and I'll look up at the ceiling and I'll say, just a moment, the voices are talking. And I've actually had students say, do we need to call 911? And I'm like, not those kinds of voices.
So what you're saying is you're demon possessed, is what you're saying.
Maybe, but not ascendant. I am definitely still rider. I am not being ridden. I don't think I've ever seen you laugh that way, Lorette. That's awesome.
We've lost her.
Yeah. It's gonna be a good one today, folks.
Okay.
Yep, we've lost her.
I'm supposed to be leading this conversation.
And you're doing a great job.
I'm so proud of you. I'm so good at my job. I'm so good at it. Okay.
It's just hard when I serve things up that well. It's just hard to stay away from him, isn't it?
It is. Okay. So, what do you guys think about how the plot resolves? And the reason why I say it's Agatha Christie is because Agatha Christie just does this thing where she hides the ball a little bit.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like this story is hiding the ball a little bit. And it's this crazy It reminds me a little bit of Then There Were None in the way that the characters interact. So, thoughts, feelings, talk. Don't make me laugh.
No laughing. The It's interesting that you use "And Then There Were None." I actually was in that show once upon a time, and one of the things that I picked up on it a little bit early because I said to myself, I think I know. I think I can predict this one because I've had just enough breadcrumbs. Agatha Christie, one of the things that and she was, if I remember correctly, she was inducted into the Mystery Writers Guild, I think they call it, the Mystery Writers troop, whatever it is. But one of the requirements, and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle has not been, he never will be. And one of the requirements is that you have to give the reader all of the clues. You have to make them evident. You don't have to make them obvious, but you do have to make them evident. And Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, of course, is always infamously holding on to one piece of information that Holmes has that none of the rest of us do. And it's like, if only you were paying attention to his cuffs, Watson, you would have noticed that there was, it's like, no, nobody, you didn't write anything about the cuffs, you jerk. But Lois
I
McMaster
still love
Bujold,
Sherlock.
I do too. And the modern iteration of Sherlock that they do on television is much better about doing that. With Benedict Cumberbatch and Watson. I can't. His name's left me for the moment. We'll find it later. So you'll come up with it. But she does a wonderful job of giving, of doling out the breadcrumbs and allowing you to feel like you're solving it at least before Oswell. And I love the fact that Oswell is like, no, it's got to be facts. It's got just the facts, ma'am. And it's like Penric is like, but these are facts. No, they're not. Yeah, couldn't they? Des, what do you think? I'm not telling you. But there's
Martin
just
Freeman.
these little bits and pieces, and I loved it.
Yeah. Well, I think Oswald also gets stuck on admissible facts. Rather, right? Like Penric's like, okay, this is a magical case. We're gonna get magical facts. Oswald's like, how am I gonna tell this to my superiors? What am I gonna tell them?
But
How
he
do I
also
write
has
this up?
He also has a reason for that because he had somebody convicted and the person was executed. And
Yeah.
it's like the same thing that happened where he's like, I don't want to be too late because a woman was burned as a witch.
Yeah, I don't want to be too late, and I don't want to be too early. I want to make sure it's right. That was one of the things, and maybe we'll get a chance to talk about this a little bit later too. She does some really interesting stingers at the end of these two stories. That one for Oswell was really, and maybe the sternness of Oswell starts to make more sense in light of that stinger. It's really the first time that we get a view of that, and that was well written, and it was not gratuitous. It wasn't like it took over the story. It didn't overdo anything, but it just gives this glimpse into the character development, and I really liked it. Obviously, it was something that has been with him all the time, and it informs the character a little bit more and gives us an opportunity to say, oh, I have a little bit more empathy for Oswell.
Oh, I have nothing but empathy for him. The poor dude he doesn't understand the uncanny. He doesn't understand the magical, and he keeps getting sucked in with this shaman and this sorcerer, and he's like, I just don't even know what to do with this.
Rigid is the word I like to use.
Well, I mean, he's just like, I'm a normie. I'm just a normie.
Well, and both Penric and Inglis are hyperactive kittens as well.
Oh yeah.
So not only is he like completely having no idea what's going on, he's having to herd these two kittens around.
He's like, when they come back and they say, I think we have something that we should tell Oswell about. All of those foxes. Is there going to be a way that he can know that information without us telling him that we broke into some place? No. Maybe we better find a different way. Like Cagney and Lacey are unleashed in the middle of anyway, it's just
Cagney and Lacey, that's a deep
all
cut.
of these buddy cop references, sorry.
Speaking of cats, so Penric is the curious cat that always gets himself in trouble with
Oh,
his
yeah.
curiosity.
For sure. I like that he even describes himself as something like a deranged sorcerer running around town, like talking to the uh, what's it called? The guy who's in charge of the sorcerers.
The
And
bailiff.
then and then the the daughter Archdivine. He's like, I have to knock on her door, and I'm covered in dirt. He almost got killed.
And then he lays his head down on her lap, like, and just wants to lay down at her feet. I just want to lay
Yeah.
down.
I love that he's like confessing, like, I'm just really worried that I'm going to be destroyed by these violent things I've done. And she's like, just go take a bath and go to bed.
Yeah.
Fine.
And his line at that moment, I didn't expect you to mother me. And she says, if your mother were here, she would tell you the exact same thing. But I'm telling you as your mentor, so just do it.
And Des is like totally laughing at him the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a nice, and it's enough real humanity inserted into those kinds of situations.
Mhm.
I mean, we get some of these stories and whether we're talking about The Expanse or we're talking about the Lloyd Alexander series, any of them that we're talking about, we have these huge battles, and when they're over, nobody says anything about cleaning up all the bits and pieces. Nobody says anything about. The only place that I've ever seen it is when Aslan in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe pulls, I think it's Peter aside, and he says, remember, always clean your sword. And I was like, that is the stupidest thing to hear in the middle of nowhere. But you know what? You're right. You have all these battles, and they get one line. After everything was cleaned up, they gathered at the main hall. No, she goes through and she says, no, he was dirty and he still had work to do. So he slopped around and people looked at him kind of crazy. And he's like, don't mess with me. I just need to report what I'm really quite wonderful, quite human. I really.
Oh my gosh, you would love the end of Shards of Honor. You would love it.
Okay.
More
I'll write
Bujold.
that down. I'll write that down.
That's the beginning of the Vorkosigan saga, I believe it's what it's called. Okay.
On a similar note to that, though, I really like when we get Desdemona popping in with how other people think about Penric, because like one of my favorite tropes in fantasy is getting outside perspective on our protagonists, right? So if we're in the head of our protagonist all the time, getting like an interlude chapter that sees a side character perspective on the main one.
Okay.
And here we get something similar with Desdemona being like, Penric, you're blind. This is what these people are thinking about you.
We get some of that in the next story too, which I get a kick out of. I get a kick out of there as well.
For sure.
Yep.
I just like Dez's running commentary on what's going on.
Yeah.
And especially when she's acting like a bossy big sister.
Yeah.
So what do you guys think about the fox?
What about it?
Well, you have a demon-possessed fox. The demon is ascendant, unlike Todd's demon. And so what do you just think about that whole dynamic? I thought it was really fun and interesting.
I found it interesting. But stacked up against the next story that we'll go with, it presents a really interesting dichotomy. To go from a human host to an animal host. We read, and we'll get to the other story. I'm not trying to introduce spoilers on that one. We'll get to the next story where they talk about how that doesn't always work so well. And in this case, it does. And I think it's a beautiful, maybe it's a nice Mother's Day comment about how much it takes to be a mother, whether you're a mother fox or a mother person. Maybe it's just a nice testament to the fact that there is so much going on. Sometimes it's nice to take a break. I'm not trying to, add a lot of level 3 stuff into that, but I found it interesting, especially when I compare it to what we get in the second story of going from a higher level of organization to a lower level of organization of creature. And yet, in this case, it worked. And everybody's worried about that. Everybody's so worried. It's like, I'm not sure this is going to work, Penric. You're kind of a crazy person. You don't understand so much. And Desdemona's like, you really don't, but it's probably going to be okay. And he's like...
Meanwhile, Penric's just like, I just want a fox to pet.
Right? The fox won't let him pet her.
I don't want it to stop biting me. Will it just stop biting me?
Well, I find it very interesting that the fox, the demon-possessed fox, almost kills the woodman.
Yeah.
The forest manager. And then there's also that scene between the head sorcerer and the fox at the very end of the story where they're sitting in the stable. And he looks at the fox and he says, I am so sorry for your loss.
Yeah.
And they have
that
this
was
grieving
cool.
moment.
That was really cool.
And then Penn says, do demons grieve? And she's like, oh yes. Yes, we do. We don't come into the world understanding it, but we learn it very quickly.
Yes.
I
And
thought
then
that was pretty awesome.
The whole situation also brings to mind how important upraising is. Because demons are basically children that grow up. I mean, they learn exactly what their quote-unquote parents teach them.
And children are basically demons who, anyway, sorry. Did I say that out loud? That was my inner joke.
Well, there is this, I don't remember who said it, but the civilization is invaded every generation by barbarians, and we call them children.
Yeah, I love it. It's
But
true.
yeah, it's the demon can't hold on to everything when it goes into a fox, but it keeps what it considers to be most important, and that's the mothering instincts.
Yeah, I love it. That's nice. That's a nice insight.
Yeah.
One of the things, and I don't know how close we are on time, but one thing
I'm
that
not
I
worried
wanted
about
to,
it.
Okay. One of the things that I wanted to I used to wear glasses. From the time that I was 8 years old, I wore glasses, and I wore the kind of glass. This is back in the dawn of time when glasses were actually made out of glass. And my glasses were so thick. How thick were they?
Did Ben Franklin make them for you?
Almost. He had given instructions to the person who made my glasses. They were so thick that when you would look at me straight on, you would actually see space behind me because of the way it warped everything. I was so blind. And when Penric is talking to the young Baron Pikepool, thank you. And he's like, yeah, everybody thought I was crazy, and then a guy had me fitted with glasses, and all of a sudden, trees had leaves, and I could see things. And I remember the day that I got my glasses when I was 8 years old. The guy put them on my face, and my mom and dad were in the room, and I turned and I looked outside, and I said, "Does everybody see like this? I see leaves." And my dad was like, I am so embarrassed with you right now. And my mom, who wore glasses, kind of chuckled. But when I heard that description, I was like, I know exactly how that sounds. And
Did you cry?
Okay. I did. I was in line at Kneaders and I was crying, and people are looking at me like, I don't think they're sold out of French toast yet. I think you're going to be okay. I'm like,
Okay, so what do we think about the older? Now I can't remember the name. We just said it.
Baron Pikepool.
Baron
Pikepool. What do we think about his plan? Does it make sense?
Yeah. Well, I mean, no, but maybe.
In a twisted sort of way, yeah.
Maybe if I were a murdering bastard, yeah, it would make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I tend not to be a murdering bastard, so
Thank
at
God
least
for
as far as I know,
Maybe a demon ascends.
I was going to say there's these huge black spots in your memory.
Yeah, I don't remember what I do at night. Most people call that sleeping. I'm not so sure. vengeance seems, or wrath seems to be because we get some moments where Des and Penn are talking about these major sins. They call them major sins. We're familiar with them as cardinal sins through Western tradition. And this one, wrath, that makes us do crazy things. If you become overwhelmed by, and I guess maybe the comment is, if you become overwhelmed by anything, whether it's these negative emotions or maybe the positive emotions or maybe a demon, then be prepared for the fact that your life is probably going to go off the rails. And for me, my big takeaway, being the level 3 thing that I do when I look for level 3 stuff, I asked myself, and I actually earlier this week had a situation pop up where something went wrong and I got super consumed with being angry about some stuff. And I was like, I told my wife, I said, this is what I'm going to do. And she's like, no, you're not. Yes, I am. And she's like, so we're going to wait at least 24 hours before we do anything, right? I'm like, I'm not waiting 24 hours. Then 24 hours later, she's like, so how do we feel now? And I'm like, she's like, so we're going to wait another 24 hours. Aren't we? And I guess that's the thing. I have someone in my life that helps me come down off the ledge, that helps me calm down. And maybe if he had somebody in his life that could have talked him down, we wouldn't have had this wonderful story. So
he did. He pushed her down the stairs.
Wow, see, that's the thing. I don't think that was the person.
See, but I also think he's not the kind of person to have that person in his life.
Oh no,
like he wouldn't listen to anybody. There wouldn't be anyone to.
The person that would be in his life would be the one standing there saying, "Hey, I'll hold your beer while you go and do that."
Would be the forester.
Yeah, he had that person. There's Trooch.
yeah, exactly.
Jeez. Okay.
Yeah, so, I think he's a horrible example of a human being.
Yeah. Not admirable. So, what do we think of Penric Action's hero?
I mean, kind of badass.
Yeah, I have this vision of and I just came out of I took my daughter to go see Enter the Spider-Verse or Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse or whatever it is.
See that tonight.
I won't say anything about it except to say that I have this vision of Penric as kind of like Miles Morales. Scrawny and not quite fitting into his own body, and kind of wondering, and yet he does these things. I'm listening to the description. I'm like, wow, that'd be awesome. And he touches the guy in the back just enough to throw out his back and make him completely paralyzed. I'm like, dang, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah,
I want to know how to do that.
Well, you have to have a demon.
Yeah,
well, she does.
I think I do.
So there you go. Okay,
I love it.
So this is going to be an interesting question for you guys, and I'm asking specifically because you're both male.
Oh.
So the shamaness, is wiping blood from her nose because she's used her weirding voice. And
Poor
he
Penn.
says, well,
yeah.
So the joke is something along the lines of spontaneous bleeding, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Now, Penn has to have the joke explained to her. Did you guys get the joke, or did you have to have it explained to you?
Immediately. Immediately. And what was funny is I saw that as a setup, and I'm like, oh, this poor kid.
And the funny thing is, sorry, go ahead.
I took a little bit longer than, like, it wasn't immediate, but I got it before Desdemona was like, Penn.
She's talking about her monthlies. And it's so funny because he's had this demon living in his head who's basically only had female hosts before for a couple of years now. Like, he's gone through school, so 4 years? He still doesn't get the joke.
Yeah.
And he's basically a physician at this point too.
Right, exactly.
And he's like, where else could one bleed from? The eyes,
Spontaneously.
perhaps? The ears? I'm not sure exactly what you mean by that. And I'm like,
Dude. But Des is so cute about it. She's just like,
Yeah.
she just shakes her head. Like, you're so sweet and innocent. And sometimes I remember why I like you.
and you can hear that interplay between the two of them. They are, Des is a wonderful character that can be grandma and best friend and mother and aunt and sister and all of these different people, depending on what Penn's need is. But it's never in a condescending way. Sometimes playful, sometimes sometimes a little not condescending, but
She likes to poke
downplaying.
at him. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. She'll take it. She'll take a rib. She'll take a jab. But never condescending. It's kind of fun.
Mhm.
As opposed to the
Yeah.
demon in my head, which is always condescending. So
I hear you. I
I
hear you.
he's trying to ride, but I'm not letting that happen. Yeah.
You gotta talk to whoever had your demon before you. They didn't leave a good impression.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about that today.
So I gotta say, one of my favorite interactions is when they're walking through the forest looking for the fox. And Des is just like killing things everywhere. She's just killing all the things. I'm waving my arms, people. And then she explodes a shrew. And Penn says, "Really, Des? Are you a 200-year-old woman?" And she says, "Women." Or a 12-year-old village boy. Even I didn't pull the wings off flies.
Yeah.
And that's when she said, "I know, dear. That's why I like you." She would never do something like that.
Yeah. I imagine when you're a demon and there's nothing going on, then, it's pretty hard to stop the chaos magic that has to just flow. So, yeah, I get it.
It's kind of like the spice. It must flow.
Spice must flow.
Okay, unless you guys have anything else to say about this story, let's move on.
Yeah,
I'm good to
just
move
quick,
on.
just quick with I'd like to add. I love Thala and Lunette as characters.
Oh, yeah.
The Inglis's
Yeah.
subordinate and the shamaness.
Oh man, and they have all sorts of meet cute going on.
Yeah. Don't you talk about it too much. I just want to say I love them.
Downplayed, but enough there that it was fun.
Mhm.
Yes. And I also like the description of Oswald is grim and Inglis is glum. And so
Yeah.
Penn is like, I don't know. They seem the same. So is it good news or bad news?
Yeah, yeah. There's certainly a juxtaposition. Everybody else can see it too.
Mm-hmm.
That Penn hangs around these two guys who are just curmudgeons, and Penn is kind of like, "Huh, that was interesting." Kind of.
Okay.
The first scene felt like fishing with my grandpa, because my grandpa was like, "Yeah, well, all right, let's set him up. We're gonna sit down. Where's my beer?" And I'm like, "Grandpa, what if we go and do this?" And I'm like, "I've lived this. I've lived this."
Well, it also very funny when they're sitting there. Des is like, I want to bet who is gonna start using their magic to fish first, and he's like, she's like, I don't have anybody to bet against you. I bet against, and he's like, there's like 12 of you, don't you? Can't you just
Form betting.
form a pool?
Oh, that was delightful. That was delightful.
Todd, would you like to try reading the next introduction?
Let's move on to the Masquerade in Lodi. Again, full of spoilers for this story. Penric has moved to Lodi, an analog of Venice. He's working for the Archdeacon as a personal sorcerer. He's called to investigate a rescued sailor whose caretaker expects he is more than mad. Upon inspection, the young man becomes terrified because we all know what a badass Des is, and escapes. Penric chases the young man across the city, picking up a saint of the bastard and a retainer of the young man's family along the way. Treachery, fighting, all the demon is returning, and the demon is returning to the bastard, and the retainer is arrested for attempted murder and embezzlement. Pen and Des have another brush with their god, and Pen still is not having a satisfactory romantic interaction. I added that. I apologize.
I kind of
really
didn't
hoping
finish
for
that
that.
story.
But still accurate. Poor Penric.
Yeah,
Speaking
good.
of
I love it. I love it.
speaking of Des not realizing how people look at him.
Oh yeah, this one was full of moments where Des is like, "Do you have any clue at all what is going on?" When
Yes.
Kyo comes out, she's changed her, and then she takes off her white robe, and she's rather more filled out than she had been before, and she's like, "You really have no clue, do you? You are totally clueless." And he's like, "About what?" I'm like, "Oh man,
She even
okay."
buys him a mask so that people
Yeah.
will stop and
And,
talk to him in the street.
and he's just like, is this just so that we match, or is it tradition?
And he's 29 for crying out loud. I mean, if
Yeah,
you were
I feel
19, if you were 22, maybe 23, 29 for pity's sake.
this
To be
girl puts
fair, I
sorry.
will say it's actually more reasonable because of how much older he is, right? He's not
Okay,
he's
fair
not even
enough.
thinking about it romantically at all. So
And meanwhile,
he's
she's
just
like,
like,
ooh, they're hot. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And which sets up a nice conversation for the end.
Yes, it will, indeed. So, I think my favorite part of this story is that he gets sent down to the docks and they're like, oh, he's, to check out the sailor. And he's like blowing it off. He's like, they always think there's demons. There's never demons involved. And he
yeah.
walks to the room and the demon inside the sailor just starts screaming.
There's a demon.
It was pretty cool. He's like, yeah, whatever. I'll come and
Right.
check it out. Probably just a little drunk, maybe a little sunstroke. Nope, it's a demon.
And Des even is like, yeah, this demon just needs to go back to the bastard because
It's insane.
it's insane. It's insane. And also I like how at the very end of the story you get this chain of events of how the demon infected the sailor and how this dolphin um basically takes the sailor home and dies, and it's all like the plan of the bastard to get this demon home.
Yeah.
To the demon's home. So I really enjoyed that part of the story.
Yeah, they did a wonderful job of she did a wonderful job of putting.
I don't know, maybe it's a they for her too. You never know. She might have a demon.
She probably has somebody she bounces ideas off of. What do you think about this? Yeah, put it in a dolphin, but make sure that it's 2 dolphins because 1 dolphin isn't funny, but 2 dolphins, that's awesome. All right,
Anyway.
2 dolphins it is.
Anyway, sorry.
But yeah, there's certainly and they reference it over and over again. Just be careful with the bastard's luck because the bastard's luck is not always going to be in your favor. But in this case, they say, "Oh well, the bastard's own luck," and Des is like, "How do you know?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, that's true. I guess that could be true."
I cannot wait for you to read further into this series. There's a lot of that.
I'm sure.
I do enjoy the running through the streets to a certain extent. It's a little bit much.
Even for a 4-hour novella.
Yeah. This is, like I said, I think this is the weakest of the Des books, Pen and Des books.
Which isn't to say it's a bad book. It's
No,
still a very good book
no.
because it's
It's a
very
lot of fun. It's fun watching Penn put together the pieces. It's fun watching how chance makes things work out.
hmm
And it's fun to get action star Penn again. So
and
Yeah,
action
and
star Kyo.
well, and I think too, uh, there's something to be said for the ability to use the terrain differently. You know, in the previous book, they were tromping through the forest, and so bugs everywhere and trees and blah 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 blah. Bugs and trees and chiggers. Oh my! But then we're in when we're in Lodi, and not only are we. Not only are we in the situation where it's like, where am I going to find a canal boatman? Oh, wait, there's probably going to be another one there. It's like, they're everywhere, right?
hmm
But there's also this lingering threat just hanging over the top of him. Better take care and not get your robes dunked. And he's like, what does that mean? What does that mean? So everywhere he goes, he's like, and he sees somebody that's dirty. Wonder if he's going to dunk me in the weird. Oh, no. Okay, I'm all right. Well, I'll keep going. That piece that was thrown over the top as he's wandering through Mardi Gras on an island community and being told, "Yeah, be careful you don't get your robes dunked," over and over again. I was like, "Okay, this is I got a kick out of it." Of course, I was listening to it at 11 o'clock at night, and I had finished it at like 12:45, I think. Started listening to it and earlier in the night, and then took a break, and then came back to it. Yeah, it was. Maybe I was just punch drunk, but it was funny. I got a kick out of it.
um, there's one very serious theme in this story. Well, besides demon possession and embezzlement and attempted murder, we find out why Penn
Yes.
is in Lodi.
hmm
So his mother and the Princess Archdivine have died about 6 months apart, and he gets shuffled off to the medical establishments or to the hospice or whatever, and he is unable to separate himself emotionally from what's going on with his patients, and so he attempts suicide. How do you guys feel about how that subject was handled? It's all
I
very
think
in the background, but it's there.
I think it was very good because I don't think we needed a full Pen and Des novel on that. Right, like it was a large time skip, and we skipped past that very important step of his life. But I think having it be as part of just info given, not a full story on its own, was the right choice.
Yeah. So, my family has been heavily touched by suicide in the last 3 years. We've had some attempts in my family. We've had some individuals who successfully committed suicide. In fact, we had 2 brothers who took their lives within 6 months of each other.
Oh dear.
And so this question of how hard do things have to be before you feel like that is your only escape has been one that we have struggled with in my family for quite a while. I am actually I'm in the midst of writing a book, not necessarily directly about those experiences, but influenced and informed by those experiences. And I envy individuals who never feel like they have to answer that question, who feel like that is never something that they come face to face with. But for people who do come face to face with it, this was a very gentle touch, but certainly and this is the point where, for me at least, I found myself saying, Des is for Penn what every one of my family members who have struggled, that's what I wish for them, is that someone will be there to say, there are other options. We just need to hold on for 24 more hours. Let's find a different option. And that's really, really, really hard.
Yeah.
So her treatment of that, and it was so brief, but it was so tender, and it was nuanced, and it was absolutely heartfelt, and I was genuinely appreciative of the way it was handled. And whoever was guessing 55 minutes, congratulations. You are the winner for today.
Well,
Sorry.
No,
Sorry,
you're
not sorry.
fine. You're fine. You're fine. Well, I've been suicidal twice in my life. So, and I was very lucky to have somebody in my life that stepped in. The first time was after I had number one son. It was just postpartum depression and a bunch of other stuff that was going on. And the second time was when my ex left me. And my mother and my best friend took turns spending the night at my house because they were that worried about me for about 3 months. So I was very lucky and blessed.
Yeah.
Because I really was about ready to put a bullet in my head. So what I like about the way that she deals with this, it's touched on. It's not dwelled on. Because it's not that kind of book. So the book knows what it's doing. And I also like the fact that she says to him, she's like, you're not just a failure. You need to, you're okay. And as somebody who's been suicidal, I really appreciate the way the story deals with that and still has all the fun and humor that is in the story.
Yeah.
And it doesn't overwhelm the story. But
Well
I also
said.
have a very, very dark sense of humor. So, I mean, my ex is a cop. My mom was a nurse. Both my parents were in the Navy. My humor is very dark. So,
Yeah.
anyway,
I love what you said. It's really important to have, and for, if there are people listening to us, listening to the podcast that do not feel like you have someone, and you're feeling that way, I would encourage you in the strongest possible terms that I can, find someone, some way, find public resources, find anonymous resources. It makes a difference. And if you know someone that you are worried about, ask the questions, be there with them. If this was if I was to think about this story as, my level 1, level 2, level 3, it's a really good tale. It's a level 1 masterpiece. I think she does a good job with it, especially of making sure that all the, when I saw when I'm going deep, I apologize, but when we see Penn scanning people and he sees somebody underneath a boat, underneath a bridge, and I'm like, I know how this one's going to tie in. Nicely done, thank you. And that was great. It was a great story, but to then get to the end and be able to say, think about this. If we, coming away from that story, can learn to be better with each other and to find ways to hold each other up when we cannot hold ourselves up any longer, then this book, short and sweet and fun and touching, is a magnificent contribution to humankind.
Agreed. And sorry, we got super heavy in our lighthearted fantasy series, but I just think it's really important to bring that to it. And I would just like to say I was embarrassed when I was suicidal with postpartum depression, and so much so that only one person knew about it, and I wasn't the second time because I reached out and I knew not to be ashamed of it. So anyway, okay, our public service announcement is over. It's not,
and so are the tears. No more tears. Feel like a Johnson & Johnson baby commercial. No more tears.
Oh no. All right. I am missing. Maybe I'm not missing. Oh no, my outro is gone.
Oh.
Oh, there it is. Okay. So, unless we have anything else to say, anything you want to add?
Just that I think I want to say one thing that I thought was also really touching, and maybe it attributes. Maybe this is something that connects on this other on the previous topic. Penn asks the moment where Penn asks Keo, "Are you okay?"
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, "No one ever asks." Everybody even asked the woman that with the chick, I can't remember all of the details, but she said, everybody asked that person if they were okay. Nobody cared about me. I think it is a mark of people who go through difficult things that they become thoughtful about people who appear to be going through difficult things.
Right. And she is so alone because she comes into her sainthood when she's 14. And she's set apart from all her friends.
Yeah.
Yep. And she lost the one thing she had to look forward to, which was her dressmaking apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, the part where Penn's like, are they paying you?
Yeah.
He's like, what?
He's like, our local saint got paid. Like, you should totally be getting paid.
You should totally be getting paid. What?
And when he asked Des, and we're making chaos here, and she's like, it's all you, but I approve.
That was pretty cool. That was pretty cool.
Great. Yeah. And then the fact that the saint and the sailor get their meet cute too.
Oh yeah, they're getting that. Penn fight. They're looking at him. Do sorcerers and saints ever get together? No, no. Penn. I'm sitting there and I'm like, seriously, he's not even. Oh, come on, people. And then
I
they're
promise
like,
that changes.
Well.
Would I lie to you, Todd?
May take me a while to get there. I've got, as soon as this is done, I resume my tromp through the Wheel of Time, which was delightful. The first installment was delightful, and I'm now anxious to get started back into those. So I'm keeping my promise that as soon as my doctorate was done, I'm marching through the Wheel of Time. Really good. I'm enjoying them.
So you haven't gotten to the slog yet, is what I'm hearing.
No. And I've heard people say, listening to that one on about 1.7, 1.85 speed, not a bad thing. So we'll see how it goes.
It's also the slog hits differently for certain people.
I believe that.
Yeah. So, anything else, gentlemen, before we wrap up?
I'm good.
I just want to give a farewell to our companions from the first few Penn and Des books, because I don't think we get to see them again.
I don't think
we don't get any more Inglis or Oswell. We don't get any more Keo. So I just want to say they're wonderful characters. And Bujold, if you give us a novella about them, I would definitely.
Bujold, if you're listening to us, wow, that's awesome.
Okay, so this concludes our episode. You can find us on the Legendarium's Discord. The invite link is on thelegendarium.com. We are also on Twitter at Green Team Pod. Join us in supporting the Legendarium via Patreon. Thank you, Craig, for loaning us a little corner of your media empire, and a shout out to Horizon Brave for starting it all. Our music is Galactic Damages by Jingle Puck. For Rabbit and Todd, until next time, bye!
Bye.
Good night.